My name is Willis Griffith, and I'm a first-time candidate running for state representative in Ward 11. I'm the head soccer coach and an academic support teacher at New Hampton School. I'm also completing my Master of Public Policy from UNH, where I captained the Division I soccer team this past fall. I'm running for state rep because we need change in our state. People are leaving New Hampshire for jobs and college. Public schools are not funded effectively, and the opioid crisis is testing our communities. We need new ideas, perspective, and energy to push for New Hampshire that leads the way in public education and family-friendly policies by relying on our strong communities. I had an opportunity to come home to New Hampshire after graduating from college, to be near my family and pursue a master's degree. It is important for me to be around my mom, dad, and sister. Every family has their struggles. For mine, it was filing for bankruptcy, a failed small business, and health issues. I recognize my family's challenges are not unique, and all families face their own. Because of this, I want New Hampshire to be the best state possible for my parents as they get older. I want my sister to come back after college for a great job and affordable housing. I want Manchester to thrive on its strong public schools, safety, and sense of community. I'm running for state representative to make New Hampshire an even better place for our families by fighting for public education, increasing access to affordable housing, health care, and childcare, and prioritizing a grassroots solution to the opioid crisis. No voice is too small to be heard, and we can work together to amplify the issues that matter most to Manchester. Thank you, and I hope I can count on your support this fall.
Manchester, and welcome to Ward 13 on Manchester Public Television. Ward 13 is typically hosted by John Hopwood, and I'd like to begin by thanking John. He has made a concerted effort to bring some of the candidates from Manchester and its surrounding areas to the table, particularly those that have primaries, so that you can get to meet some of them prior to the primary. So thank you to John, and thank you to the people here who have been so supportive of us. I'm Connie Van Houten. I'm a state representative for District 45, Hillsborough District 45. I represent Manchester Wards 10, 11, and 12, the west side, from Hooksett to Bedford. I am also one of those candidates that I was talking about. I am also a primary candidate. I do have a primary on actually 2 weeks from yesterday, 13 days out, I believe, and I am running for re-election for state representative in that district. I have brought to the table, courtesy of John Hopwood and others, 2 candidates that I'd like you to meet. The first is one that you saw a promo on a few moments ago. And let me just clarify on that. That promo was when this gentleman first ran. It was 2 years ago. It still has a lot of relevance in that there are things that happen in the state legislature that take a while to happen, and things that have happened in the state legislature because of COVID that need to be revisited that hopefully we would have taken care of in the past. So let me begin by introducing, first of all, State Representative Willis Griffith, who represents Ward 11 on the west side. And Willis, I'd like you to introduce yourself a bit. Who are you? What's your background? Why did you run? Why are you returning to run again, please?
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Connie, for having me, and thank you, John, as well, for having all of us. It's great to be back on here again. As Connie mentioned, that video was from a couple years ago, and as she also mentioned, a lot of those issues are incredibly relevant now. For me, and running this time around, all of those issues were exacerbated by the pandemic, so we know that the pandemic didn't create housing issues. It didn't create issues with our schools. It didn't create restrictions on access to services. Those all occurred and were incredibly relevant before the pandemic and have been exacerbated since. And that's why I'm running, because I ran on those issues 2 years ago and fought incredibly hard in the legislature to bring education funding and resources back to Manchester, along with my seatmate and yourself, Connie. And it's incredibly important that we get back there this term and continue to fight for public education, affordable housing, paid family leave, and so much more. In the State House this past year, I served on the Ways and Means Committee, dealing with anything that was related to state revenues. So one of our big goals is property taxes here, and I hope we have a chance to talk about bringing people's property taxes down, but also equitable public education across the state. It's an incredibly important issue, and I think it's got to be the top priority for folks. Education is really a central issue, as is the environment and healthcare. We have to take them all in one breath and really consider them. I was also the the elected chairman of the Young Democrats Caucus. Our 32-member caucus prioritized and strategized different legislative approaches for a number of bills, as well as help elevate the voices of the young leaders and young advocates across New Hampshire. In addition to that, towards the end of the term, I was selected to be an assistant majority leader with the Democratic Party as well. And a tremendous amount of thanks is necessary for both Patty and Connie, because you both supported me, both in my campaign the first time around and in the State House, and certainly would not have had the success in putting policies through that I felt like I had without the guidance and mentorship of both of you as well. So thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Welcome, Willis. It's great to have you here. Before I introduce our second guest, let me just briefly say what Willis is talking about here. The guests with me today are both from Ward 11. They are both incumbents running for state representative in Ward 11. I represent 10, 11, and 12. We also have representatives from 10 and 12. And we don't run as a team per se, but we run as a collegial group. We help each other out. We balance the different ideas. We're all on different committees. We're different ages. And so that's what I think Willis is referring to. I think we have a terrific group of collegial, contemplative, intelligent people on the West Side, all of whom are made stronger by the relationships that we have among each other. That also brings me to our next guest, and I'd like to introduce her right now, too, because she's part of that intelligent and collegial group to which I refer. My next guest is Representative Patricia, or we call her Patty, Cornell. She's also from Ward 11, and according to our structure in Manchester, each of the wards gets 2 state representatives. And then there are some odd dynamics that lead to the flotarial, which is where I run. Patty, I'll let you introduce yourself before we continue.
My name is Patty Cornell, and I'm running for my 4th term as a state representative. If you caught the show a few weeks ago, you've already heard a lot of my biographical data, but I'll repeat it. I'm a lifelong resident of Manchester. Went to public schools in Manchester and attended the University of New Hampshire. I've lived in my house on the Ward 11 for 42 years with my husband, and I was a guidance counselor at the middle school of Parkside for 36 years. So I really do have very strong ties to Manchester and to Ward 11. I also served as a waterworks commissioner in Manchester for 2 terms, that's 6 years, which when I think of all the water problems that many districts in New Hampshire are having with their water and the terrible water pollution that's happening, it makes me so thankful for the water that we have in Manchester, because if you just look at it, it's sparkling clean, and the waterworks department is so protective and so innovative at keeping our water up to date. I think it's ranked one of the top waters to drink in the country. I'm also a Manchester Library trustee, and I've been there since 2008. So I'm really aging myself with all these large numbers, but and the library, I'm happy to say, is now open again for hours, and you can find that online for very brief visits. A lot of cleansing going on, a lot of precautions that have been put in place, but I think it's something that's been missed to Manchester, with the library being closed and only open for curbside for the past couple of months. But I do serve on the education committee in Concord. I was the prime sponsor last term of a bill that behavioral wellness in schools, mental health in schools, which my commission has been working on diligently, but kind of cut off now. So we'll see what will happen before November. But other things did get passed that put things in place for that. But I do want to say that for the 3 of us, we're on committees that I think are the 3 committees that have the most bills. I think Connie's, I was looking this morning, had 110 bills last year. That's just in 1 year. That's not for the 2 years. I had 89, and Willis, I think you had
Several bills in addition to the revenue side of the budget.
Yeah,
estimations.
so a lot of bills. So I don't know if people realize how much time actually goes into being a state representative. It's, from January to June, sometimes 3 days a week. So it's very hard for a young person like Willis to be able to do that in addition to support himself and work and have a job. So, you know, you've got to commend the young people for doing it, because it's really tough.
And I just want to quickly round out, too, just by mentioning my committee as well. We do have the most bills. We often went 4 and 5 days a week because of the quality of our bills, and because of our commitment, which I believe is similar in your committees, to give every bill at least one hearing, and probably more than that to deal with it in subcommittee. The committee that I serve on is Commerce and Consumer Affairs. It's an eclectic committee. It covers economic development, it covers insurance, it covers liquor, it covers banking, it covers business. I am the chair of the liquor committee, which is not quite what it sounds like. Most of our work this time was really gratifying because it was working on bills and laws related to vaping and to youth tobacco. And I'm very proud to be a very important part, a very important cog of working on those bills. Because to tell people that I work on the liquor committee, it just doesn't sound like what I do. I've also served on a couple of commissions. One is New Hampshire Tourism, and one is kind of a companion committee to what Patty was talking about, which is a business environment for mental health providers. Unfortunately, the intervention of COVID-19, didn't allow us to take any of this to the kind of fruition that we were looking for. And so I think our work for the next session is cut out in part because of the past, and also in part because of the future, because COVID-19 is a driving force of potential that we don't even recognize yet. We don't quite know yet what will be happening in the future. So we'll return to some of these other issues that we started to talk about a little bit later, but I think what I'd like to do now is just kind of throw out some ideas that we might want to talk about, ideas that are very relevant. And I think one of the most relevant thoughts in most people's minds today is education. Patty, that obviously is the area that you've worked on. And of course, I don't want to say old, but I'm a former teacher, high school, college, public school, private school, English, special education, gifted and talented. I go the gamut too. So, and Willis, I know you've stepped up on behalf of education too. What do you think of what's going on in Manchester and education, given that, and I say this kindly, but given that we really don't have much education direction from the governor and from the commissioner, it's left to the local school boards to hammer out. I'll go with anyone who would like to start. Patty?
I think that Manchester has a really good plan theoretically in place. Can preschool through 1 go into classes? I think it's maybe 2 days a week, and everyone else do it remotely. I think the problem they're having now is teachers not being able to go into the building to be able to do their classes, so I think they're going to have to rethink the whole thing. I think the good thing about the remote that they're planning is that the plan is for teachers to go into class and actually teach each class remotely from their class and have the students participate from home. And I know that Manchester is working in conjunction with Southern New Hampshire University, who's, I think, #1 in the country for remote learning. So that will be a big help. But there are so many other issues. You know, students with the disabilities, students who won't learn unless they go in, students who get therapy. There's so many questions that I think it's going to be a day-to-day problem.
It's almost an impossible situation that we've put our school boards and the officials in all of our local communities, Manchester and the rest of the state, without any guidelines or funding coming from the governor's office. It's a really difficult situation that I think if you talk to the school board members as well, they don't necessarily want that responsibility. I think that that's a pretty safe thing to say, that they've responded well, and this responsible restart is, I think, the best that we can do at the moment. But the longer you have this conversation, the more factors will continue coming up. Patty mentioned quite a few, and they just continue to add on, whether it's talking about the money that hasn't been there for the community. So we're behind on school building aids, so now our ventilation systems are out of date, and making sure that there's clean air and new air coming in the buildings when kids are back in the classrooms. It's just one example. I know that Chromebooks were handed out, but kids are kids and things are going to get broken, and it's a really difficult situation. And I think that the two most important things, and we just have to keep checking in, are the mental health of the children and the teachers and the equity of the education that's available. And whether that's the remote access or otherwise, for me and I think for most in Manchester, mental health and equity have to be the questions that keep coming up while we discuss the responsible restart.
And before we go a lot further, I served for 4 years on the school board, and I know I've sat and watched the meetings and thought, I'm glad I'm not there. Those are decisions that are very heavy-duty decisions, and I just want to give a quick shout-out to my running mate, to my cohort, also in wards 10, 11, and 12, who is on the school board, and I admire her greatly. We had asked her to be here today, and it was not a good timing, and we'll have her on later on. But that is Jane Bolio, who's running in Ward 10, and she's also the school board representative from Ward 10, and I want to make sure that I mention that too. Some of the things that you mentioned bring to mind an interesting juxtaposition here, because the decisions are on the local level, but we in Concord make decisions that are umbrella decisions, not from necessarily the governor, but from the education committee when the four of us come to meet, and however that will be in the future is what I don't really know. We're facing rolling hotspots. There are communities up north that have very little COVID investment infestation. I don't even know what my word is, but nonetheless, we'll go with it. And they can make different decisions than other areas that are hotspots. And they are rolling hotspots. There might be a flare here one day and a flare here another day. We have charge, for instance, of the state colleges. And there's some interesting things going on with funding at the community colleges. There are some waived costs that are there. I think the state in many ways is starting to make some good infrastructure changes, but I think I heard 21% is the current rate of infection of COVID-19 in our kids today, and that had not been the case. So I think it's going to be a daunting task for those of us that go back to Concord. And again, we all have primaries, so I hope you'll vote in the primary election so that you can keep us on the ballot for the general election. Sports. Sports kind of comes to mind when we're talking about education. Willis, you are deeply invested in youth sports.
I'm very, very invested in youth sports, and up until recently was coaching daily and coaching both private sessions and teams in Bedford, coaching for the club that's there now. And that, but prior to that, was at a school up north that is now bringing their students back, and I'm unsure if they're continuing their sports, but these student athletes train so hard and put so much time and effort, and it really is such an important tool for socialization and really building relationships and leadership skills and any other number of things. And we're starting to see some districts participating in sports, some youth leagues participating in sports. And as important as it is scary to see. And I've seen within the last few months the soccer fields covered with kids. And even at the beginning of the outbreak, when students are out of school, go by to see what's going on, and you've got 30 to 50 to 100 kids on their own playing, and they're doing what they should be doing and training and having fun, but it's part of the spread, and it's a really difficult situation to be in. I think the hard decision has to be made that we shouldn't be having student athletes, teachers, teams traveling across districts into other areas, because it's how it's going to spread, whether it's asymptomatic or someone showing signs and is able to play through it or whatever it might be. It's just not what we need at the moment, unfortunately.
And we're
and I
talking
think
to-
Manchester voted the other night to have fall sports.
Right.
So it will be happening in Manchester, but there are other places in New Hampshire that have voted not to. So I don't know how scheduling is going to happen, or who they're going to be playing, or what. Another difficult decision.
Absolutely, and I just want to remind our viewers that we're talking to Representative Willis Griffith from Ward 11 and to Representative Patty Cornell from Ward 11. And because of your special interest, Patty, I'm going to throw it over to you. Social emotional learning, what is the role of that in our choices of education?
Well, up until now it's been a hodgepodge of what schools wanted to do. But it's funny because my commission was just about done, and we're doing our priorities. And one of the bills we did pass when we met at the Whittemore Center when the bills were put together was 1555, which included a Children's System of Care in Schools Act of 2020, which not funded at the moment, but every district will be implementing MTSSB, which is a 3-tier layer of care for children in our school systems. You know, the first tier is just like a general community-wide learning, respect, responsibility. The second tier is dealing with students who are having some difficulties, and the third tier is really targeted help. But every district can do it the way it best fits for them. So it's not like everybody has to do the same thing. It's the districts who have already implemented it and done it well took a couple of years to get input from parents, teachers, community members, stakeholders to what is going to work right. So, but as Dr. Goldhart said in one of the meetings in Manchester, our superintendent, that guidance counselors are going to be playing a big part in our return to school. And it was nice to hear him say, because I am a former guidance counselor, that he doesn't want them dumped on to be doing a lot of the little jobs and things. He wants them to be used actually as counselors to be helping kids get through this.
And as we kind of come toward the end of our time, incredibly, to the end of our time, I'd like to just quickly throw it over to the other end of the age spectrum. One of the bills that I had in that met demise because of COVID was a long-term care study bill. And I was not, there's no way that I have a crystal ball or anything of the sort, but I had seen issues in our long-term care facilities. I actually live in Ward 12. And along the route that I go home, there are a couple of long-term facilities as well as facilities for older citizens. And the bill because of COVID, the bill didn't go anywhere, but I had assembled a large group of people from AARP to all sorts of other groups with special interests for long-term care. And I think that's another place we're going to have to look again, because something like 80% of, I think I have the number, 80% of our 429 deaths in our state have come basically out of that long-term care group. And so I visualize us having some really important things ahead of us to look at. And just to defer back to what Willis said earlier, the word revenue, the word spending, those are all going to be issues as well. As we wind down, let me just throw my little pitch in, not necessarily for us, but for the idea that we need to have people in Concord that are going to look at all aspects, the young, the old, the income, property taxes. Patty, you mentioned property taxes. No one wants to see property taxes go up. We want to see good management of our money. And I think in that vein, it's important for us just to take a good, strong look at the people that we send up, whether it be those of us that are sitting here today, and I hope it is, or somebody else. We need to make sure those people are ready for those kinds of challenges. We have 1 minute left. 30 seconds, Willis.
On the spot. Well, I'm really glad I was able to join both of you today for this. There are so many issues that we need to support. Jobs up front as well. We need to make sure people are getting back to work and able to support their families, and that we're supporting businesses as well. So that's not something we've directly touched upon, but we need to make sure we're supporting our businesses as well.
And Patty?
I'd just like to throw in a little pitch, actually, for the three of us, because all three of us show up, we do our job, we put a lot of research into bills, and we work really hard for our communities. And I know we're really invested in Manchester and in our wards that we represent. So I am putting a little pitch, and I hope you'll vote for us on Election Day, September 8th.
And I will second that, and I'm sure Willis will third that.
Absolutely.
I think, especially given the unusual nature of our times, given COVID-19 and everything else that is incumbent upon the aftermath of COVID-19, we've got some tremendous tasks ahead of us, and we can't even sit here and predict those, which is a very difficult thing for us to do. I can tell you this, though, that we have probably 300 more topics that we would like to have spoken about. I have page after page here. The two people that I have with me are incredible legislators. They're incredible friends, and they're incredible assets to the state of New Hampshire. We'll be winding down at this time and taking a quick break and returning with a separate guest. But in the meantime, first of all, thank you to John Hopwood for allowing us this time. Thank you to Willis Griffith and to Patty Cornell, both from Ward 11, for your being here today, but more than that, for your service to our state and for the decency that you bring to the plate. We'll take a break now. We'll be back with another special guest and even a new host. Thank you very much.